finally time to start getting your frame prepped and ready to do some paint work on it. And before I do that, I want to go over a couple of things. The products I'm going to use on your frame and one of my pickling techniques. And I get a lot of comments on my YouTube channel about this pickle. This is called Pickle X20. I get this, order this offline. You can go to picklex20.com and find it. And it removes the oxidization from this metal. So there is moisture in the air, which is humidity right now, and this metal is exposed, and it's oxidizing as I'm sitting here. Now if I just went in here and pre-cleaned this and put this in the booth, there's a chance there could be some oxidization that I don't get off of here. And anywhere that happens, say if I got my hand touched it right here, you know, 5, 6, 7 months from now, maybe even sooner, there might be a print come up from that through all that hard work I've done from the bottom to the top. It'll be a blister which will show up. So I'm going to do a lot of work on this. So to prevent that from happening at the very beginning, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to re-pickle all this metal with this Pickle X. I just spray a little light coat on and then take my blue towels and wipe it off, and make sure I try to wipe off every bit of it. But when I do that, as I'm drying that, you can feel the etch that's going in there and the tooth it's putting in it. So now that is completely oxidation free and ready to go. And I'll do this pickling just before I put on my seam sealer. I'm going to take and seam seal all my welds with this 2-part self-leveling seam sealer. I'll come in here and wipe every one of them. That'll seal off any pinholes or any small imperfections I have in those welds. So they'll be a good solid weld, and oxidation won't go in there and start rusting or creating problems on that later. And it'll make clean these welds up a little bit, having that little bit of a seam seal filler in there. I always seam seal all my welds. It's just a habit I've been doing for years. Reason I do it is because if you notice, go to a car show, go see some paint work done, a lot of times where there's a weld, you'll see a blister, and that's what's happened. There's a little small pinhole, it's sucked in some moisture, and then it starts blistering there, and you've got a blister under a high-dollar paint job or something like this under the frame paint. And just hard to go back and fix. So it's a good little precaution just to go ahead and seam seal those welds up. So once I get the welds cleaned up and seam sealed, then I will I'm going to sand all this down, put this in the booth. I'll probably pickle it one more time just before I epoxy it. Another good thing about that Pickle X is the etch and the tooth that it puts in. This epoxy loves it. Now you can't put an etch primer on it because it has acid in it as well. You need to put an epoxy over the Pickle X, and that will give it a tooth bond, a chemical bond, and it'll be ready to accept whatever top coat you put on it and last a long time. I started on my seam, so I went ahead and sanded everything one more time with 80 grit, then got in here with my hand and really sanded good on this zinc coating on here, so hopefully it'll stick to that. It's going to be a hard time sticking that, but I've got it sanded and etched it and then epoxy it, and it ought to stick pretty good. But so now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pre-clean the entire frame. It won't be touched with hands anymore, all this bare metal. I'm going to pre-clean it real good and do a quick little etch down these welds, and then put my seam sealer on this side. Then I'll flip it and do the same thing. Seam seal that side, go to lunch, let that cure on out, come back and touch that up, and then this thing will be ready to go into the booth. All the seam sealing and sanding done. I had to end up doing quite a bit of sanding over that seam sealer, but now it's time to get this thing. I got it in the booth. Let's do some pre-cleaning, and then I'll come up one more time and do one light etching over all this with my Pickle X, and that'll probably wrap the day up. And in the morning I'll come out here and I'll shoot my epoxy, we'll shoot our paint, and this thing will be ready to come off the rotisserie, go on some stands, and we can start mopping some stuff up. So let's get this baby pre-cleaned. Epoxy this tonight. It's about 75 degrees in here. I've been working on this all day, and I've got the temperature up, feeling real good with it. So I'll fix to tack this thing off real good. Shoot my epoxy here, 2 big fat coats real nice on this dude, and let that sit all night. And I'll be able to come out in the morning and then put the ceramic paint on tomorrow, and this baby will be wrapped up. So, all right, it's been a really good day on the truck. Here it is, and it's epoxy. I put on 2 to 3 really healthy coats of epoxy on this. to try to fill in a little bit of the imperfections in the frame, because I wasn't planning on doing a bunch of sanding and stuff on it. And it's going to take all night for this to cure. This epoxy is really slow, and I really want to outgas really well. So in the morning I'll come in here and mix up my Eastwood ceramic paint, and I'll put 2 to 3 coats of ceramic Eastwood paint on this thing, and it is going to be beautiful. The next morning I'm out here. It's about 75 degrees or so yesterday in the booth, and then it got pretty cool last night, down to about 60, 65. So that allowed me to have a good window of letting this epoxy sit in there and cure and outgas. Now they say you can go up to 5 days on that epoxy without even having to scuff it, and you can put paint right on it. I like to do it overnight. That way next morning I can come in and all I have to focus on paint. Because there's a lot of work in getting the epoxy on there, getting it pre-cleaned and tacked, and the coats you need to put on there. And then when you get all that cleaned up and then go into paint, it's just a lot of work and wears you out. So I try to do all my epoxy in the night before. That allows me to get a good, let it outgas good, get in there and get a good look at it this morning. If there's any trash or anything in there, I can nip that trash out. I'm putting this Eastwood 2K ceramic black on it, framed chassis black. I love this stuff. I like the finish it has. It lays out good. On my frame, I'm going to use a 1.6 watt gun on this. It recommends a 1.3 to 1.7, but on a frame, the frame rail, they're real narrow. I'm not got to worry about shooting that big wide pattern and doing an overlap, so I don't have to use that smaller tip. I can use this 1.6, turn the air pressure down a little bit on it, have it coming out of there like butter, and less overspray. Works like a champ. It'll lay it out there like you wouldn't believe. So I'm going to get this mixed up 4 to 1. Get my gun ready. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to shoot this puppy. I just want to take a minute to show you how important it is to shake this and stir it and really check your paint. Now I've had this on the shaker for about 5 minutes. I should have left it on there for about 30 minutes. But when you go in the bottom of that, see that right there? That's my ceramic material down at the bottom of this steel. So I've still got to do some more shaking. So it can't hurt to just shake. Open the lid up, stir this a little bit, and then go back and put it on the shaker again, because you can see how much this is down there in the bottom still. So I'm going to put this back on the shaker. I'm going to bust all that loose, put this back on the shaker before I start mixing this up. All right, after stirring that, get that broke loose and then put it back on the shaker. Now it's nice. But if you'll notice on top of the can, and anytime it says on top of the can to shake and stir, it's very important to do that. I actually shook it, stirred it, shook it again, so that's very important to do. Now I'm in the booth here, and it's time to get set up to spray this thing. And I want to get my gun set up. Now I told you I'm running a 1.6 tip, and I'm doing that because I don't have to worry about big large panels and doing an overlap. I just want a nice wet coat to come out 4 to 6 inches wide and roll through this pretty quick. I want this gun to be moving pretty quick. And so this way I can turn the pressure down. I can get a nice little pattern. So right here, it's kind of heavy in the middle. So I open up this pattern until I get a good wet pattern, about 4 to 6 inches, that I can move along pretty good with. Very important to go ahead and check that pattern on the test panel before you get onto your whatever you're going to paint. I spend a little more time right here on my test panel and get this gun right. If my material's too thick, I just stop, go reduce it, or if my gun's acting up, whatever I got to do to make it work perfectly right here. That way, as soon as I hit my part I'm going to paint, it's coming out nice, wet, and smooth. Doing paint work's like building a house. The house, you got to have a level, nails, and your lumber. Well, with doing paint work, your level is your mixing rates. You get them just right on the money. The nails is your binders, your activators. Make sure you got it right for your temperature, your atmosphere you're going to use. And then your lumber is the proper materials, what you're doing here. Like this frame, I've got an etch, I've got an epoxy, and I've got this ceramic coat going on top of it. All 3 of those are outstanding products for each other. So now I just got to come in here and do the spraying. So I've got my gun set up to where I'm about 6 to 8 inches away. I can move pretty quick to get a nice wet pattern. With this low pressure, I'm not going to have a lot of overspray, and I'll be able to roll right through this frame pretty quick. So let's start putting some paint on this frame. See how smooth and easy that's coming out? If I'm having to force this or go slow or or recoat and all that, I need to stop and reset my gun up. I need it coming out of this gun smooth, slick, and wet as fast as I go across it pretty much. Finally, we got all this thing painted in our ceramic Eastwood paint, and I just love that single stage ceramic chassis black. It's so easy to deal with, so easy to spray. Let me give you a closer look at how well this did. All right, now here she is, and you can see how beautiful that chassis black is. That's about 3 pretty good healthy coats on there, and now it's time to let this thing cure, and I'm going to go start prepping your front radius arms and the gas tank shield, and a few more little Mickey Mouse stuff, and we'll be ready to start putting this dude back together. I got a prime example here of why I use Pickle X. This is Pickle X 20 that you can order online. Before I put it on it, first it's a great base under epoxy primer. Put that down on your bare metal and put your epoxy primer on there. You're not going to have any trouble. But let me give you a closer look. This piece I had blasted. I had moved this piece to the paint booth, and it has sit in there for probably about a month. I want to show you what happens here. It's completely blasted and been sitting in the paint booth. And you can see exactly where my fingers touched this thing. So originally, when I first touched that, right, just like that, there's my fingerprints. That didn't show up. That didn't show up till just several weeks after I had it blasted. So if I would have pre-cleaned and just epoxied over that, there's a good chance that that oxidization right there would have just kept going, and then I'd have had a blister in my paint. So I take my Pickle X and I'll spray this thing down with Pickle X and wipe it all off. It's going to neutralize. It's going to neutralize that oxidization, and it will be no more. But unless you neutralize it, it's going to be underneath your paint. So that's why I always use my Pickle X 20. I got most of your other small items prepped for paint. Since I'm on the paint roll of getting the frame paint, I'm going to go ahead and paint a bunch of the other items so we can start putting some of this stuff together. So I've got all that in the booth. I've got some filler on some more stuff waiting on it to cure. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint this rear axle because it's pretty much ready to go in. I checked your spring width. It's right on the money. I'm going to go ahead and remove these off of here, clean up your brake lines, remove your drums because I'll send them out and have them turned, and we'll put new shoes and stuff on all that. But also I'm going to pull this rear cover off and take a look at the inside of this, make sure there's no metal shavings, and make sure it is what they say it is. A lot of these junkyards and stuff, they'll yank the rear end out and not know what the gear is and sell it as whatever. But I'm going to make dang sure that we have matching gears in the front and the rear before I put all this stuff together. Well, here's your rear axle. I got it all stripped down. This is a Dana 80, and it is massive. I checked. It does have a limited slip in it. 410 gear, has a reluctor wheel on there if we want to use that to run a speedometer or who knows what. Now it's time to get in here and get this thing prepped and ready for paint. Well, Nathaniel, this is your rear axle, and I've taken the cover off and done all the cleaning inside, cleaned up your rear cover, blasted your rear cover, glued it back on, and now I'm just doing some cleanup on it. It was kind of rough, and I know you're just making a driver here, but I just want to take a little bit of time here to go in here and try to put a little tooth into every bit of it, and I'll pre-clean this thing, so I hope I'm not spending too much time on it. Finally, this thing's about done. From the time this thing got here off the truck, it was nasty, so I steam cleaned it. Then I pulled it back here and took a wire brush and kind of went over it. Then I washed it in Purple Power. Then I come in here and I pre-cleaned it. Then I sanded it, and then I pre-cleaned it. Then I sanded it, and then pre-cleaned it. And now I'm pickling it. So it's just a lot to get this thing as prepped as I have here. But I had to get all the loose flake and grease and oil off of it. So I'll get this thing pickled up, and it's time to put it in the booth, and it all looked pretty dang nice.
when I get done with it.
Finally, got this axle done. Let's get this thing in the booth and get this baby painted. Well, Sandy, I've got a pretty good run of black going here. This is going to get us a long ways. I got your radius arm mounts for your axle, your rear hitch, your spring mounts, your new cross member, and that massive axle. So now I'm going to heat this booth up, put some epoxy on all this stuff, a couple of coats of the black ceramic, and I'll go ahead and put this axle in, the rear springs in, the radius arms in. I'll get to put a lot of stuff on the frame. We'll start going back together now, finally. So let's get this stuff heated up, get some epoxy on it. All right, I've been showing 2 coats of epoxy on it. Let that set for a couple hours. Now it's time to shoot the black ceramic Eastwood single stage paint on it. So let's shoot some paint. Well, Nathaniel, we've wrapped all this up. Now it's time to let all this stuff to cure. You can see how nice it all looks. Your radius arms are just slick as glass. Got your gas tank shield done, your other radius arm, your rear hitch, radius arm part, spring plates, cross member. So all that looks nice. I want to show you this Ford. You're a Ford man. This 1964 Galaxy that come in, we're doing a old hot rod look scheme to it. It's got a Tremec 5-speed in it. It's got a stroked 460, well over 600 horsepower, well over 600 foot-pounds of torque. I think it's about 630. So this thing is going to absolutely be a monster. It'll annihilate the tires that's underneath the back of it. We're going to do it in a semi-gloss black. I'm going to do a nickel finish on this trim. So that ought to be a really nice old Ford. So now I got your frame all here. Let all that stuff inside the booth cure out. And we'll start putting some of this together.